Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to talk about how to swing trade stocks. The way we do it using fundamental and technical analysis, and I'm going to go over some of the hottest stocks in the market, the big winners over the past several weeks or so in the market, and also some really good setups in the days and weeks ahead. I'm Brian Neal, founder of TradeToBeFree.com, and been a part of the Better Business Bureau since 2006. We have an A+ rating with them, the highest rating and a very high rating for this industry, and you can go to their site and check out our rating there. And today I'm going to look at one of the biggest setups that we were watching before September 1st, and that was USCT. It was our number one pick that week in the weekly alert. And the weekly alert is a listing of all of our top trading setups that we're looking for in our own trading. So these are stocks that we trade in our own accounts, and what we're looking for is the top growth stocks and also companies beating estimates with rising future expectations, and usually in a strong uptrend near an ideal technical entry point. And to me, my years of trading over the past decade, I found this to be the best way to swing trade stocks, and I'm going to show you a great example of what we look for and how we do it here in this video. And what I want to look at is USCT. This is a stock that was in a leading industry, you know, the semiconductors and the SMH ETF are leading the market this year, or helping to lead the market this year. And this stock fell in that space, in that industry. It's ultra clean holdings. And one of the things we look for is whether a company is beating estimates or not, and whether the estimates are rising or not, and how much they're rising. And what we want to find is a stock like this where they beat by a wide margin this past quarter by 11 cents per share in this case, and estimates are still increasing for future quarters, okay, and future years. All right, estimates, the consensus estimates are just a combination or an average of all the estimates by analysts that follow stocks and also the company itself, okay? So we want to see those estimates rising over time, but that's not good enough. You know, we also want to see a company that has a track record of beating those estimates, because if they continue to forecast, or if analysts forecast a really good quarter and estimate that the earnings will be better than what they previously thought, it doesn't really matter if they can't meet those estimates. So they have to have a track record of beating and meeting those estimates in the past before the rise of future estimates really mean anything to us, okay? So we want to see a combination of both, rising estimates along with a strong track record of beating those estimates. And USCT had that, you know, going into September, and they also had a very reasonable valuation in terms of their P ratio and PEG ratio. Semiconductors, it's a very cyclical industry, so you have to watch for those turns, you know, when the good times are about to end and oversupply occurs, and you're about to go into the downward phase of a cycle, okay? But there were signs still here that, you know, estimates were rising, they were beating the estimates, and the growth was still strong, and the valuation was still reasonable. So that's what piqued our interest in our screens and our scans initially. And then when we looked at the chart from there, we found that this stock had a very good long-term uptrend. You know, if you go back to over the past year on this chart, I'm not sure if this will fit into the screen capture video I've got right now. It doesn't quite do that, but you know, I can actually shrink this for you so you can see it better. But you can see over the past, raise it a little bit here for you. So if you go back to the past year or so, you can see how this stock is making higher lows and higher highs over time. And at the time we featured the stock, okay, it was forming this consolidation pattern, and this consolidation right here is a very strong one in that it's not a very sharp pullback here, okay? You know, when you see a very sharp pullback of more than, say, 10 or 15%, you oftentimes have to create another base and have to sort of let the buyers and sellers, actually the sellers, you know, sort of exhaust themselves, you know, after that sharp pullback. Okay, what happens when you have a sharp pullback is that people who are in the stock, you know, when they see that sharp pullback and they got in pretty close to where the stock is now or above it, they're waiting for a rebound to get out of the stock. So that sharp pullback in and of itself creates a situation where, you know, rebounds tend to be sold more easily and more quickly overall, okay? That's why when you see a sharp pullback, you often don't get that move back into new highs and a continuation of the uptrend initially anyways. And the stock needs time to sort of settle down and consolidate and form another base. And that's what it was doing here. You can see after this pullback, it started to form this other consolidation here where the stock started to move more sideways during the pullback rather than that sharp vertical drop. Okay, so now we're seeing maybe a few percent drop in the price over the past few weeks here. This more shallow slope, and what we want to do is, in this system with our methodology, we want to get in once the price closes above this short-term downtrend resistance line here. So this line right here is called the short-term downtrend resistance, and you need at least 3 touches, not 2 touches, but 3 touches to confirm that short-term downtrend. Okay, and then once the price closes above there, that would be the entry point in our system. Okay, and given the strong growth, low valuation, the strong consolidation here within a strong long-term uptrend that lasts more than a year, all these factors were coming together to produce a good trading setup. And we said that this looked like a very good setup, and we felt like it could be one of the biggest moves in September. And we saw the stock move. Once it hit the entry point, it moved, I think 25-30% within 2-3 weeks. Okay, so that's a really good example of how to swing trade stocks. You find a top growth stock, or at least a company that's beating estimates with rising future expectations in earnings. Okay, a stock in a long-term uptrend, and then look for these consolidations where it's more horizontal than vertical, where it's sort of quietly gathering strength, quietly and slowly but surely the sellers are being exhausted. Okay, you still got the fundamentals that are rapidly improving, which is key. Okay, no matter what anybody tells you, it's also an important factor. And once it hits the entry point by breaking out of that short-term consolidation, is when we jump in, and then we put a stop generally below either the uptrend support, if it's a very strong uptrend support, or below the prior low, which in this case would be here. You can drop a stop below here, okay, and then put a limit order for anywhere between 4 and 10%. In this case, an initial target could have been just below this resistance area here, which was tested twice, okay, and held. So you could have put a limit order to sell just below 26, say 25.90, just below that whole dollar amount, and then let the rest ride and maybe take some more off, once it quits going up after it breaks out, and then take the final portion off if it, say, closes below the 20 EMA, which is not on this chart, but if you put the 20 EMA, which you can certainly do easily on Stocktwits.com and any other charting program for that matter, but if you put the 20 EMA on there and it closes below that and then goes below that candle or that low that made that day, when it closed below the 20 EMA, when it goes below that day's low, you can take the final position off. If it doesn't go below that low and starts rebounding after it closes below the 20 EMA, you can sell into the next rally. Okay, and in this case with USCT, given its strong fundamental momentum, okay, and its reasonable valuation, its strong technical pattern, and strong long-term uptrend, if the trends continue to go in a positive direction, which certainly may be the case here, this could go a long way. In fact, this could go to 35, 40, and may not close below the 20 EMA for quite some time. So this is a great way to take some profits, very good profits very quickly on a stock through swing trading. Okay. Once you get to that first target up here, you can stop the rest at your entry point, okay, to avoid any loss on the trade. And you can let the rest run here until it closes below 20 EMA and goes below that day's low. Okay, so that's a great example of a good swing trading setup, and one that worked really well this past month. And another good example I want to show you was MTOR, and it's another stock we had in August, this time in early August, and this was another very good setup too. Again, we can see the company is beating expectations by a wide margin each quarter. Okay, the estimates are going higher. All right, and in this case, PE ratio, the PE ratio is just 9. There's other fundamental valuation metrics you can look at, but that's one of them that's very commonly used. Okay, and this one had a very low valuation based on that PE ratio. What I really liked about this stock from a technical standpoint is, again, it was in a very strong long-term uptrend. Okay, it was in this consolidation here. This is almost a cup with handle consolidation. This is not a top growth stock by any means. It has good growth, but I wouldn't play that cup with handle pattern necessarily alone on a stock like this. I'd want to see a good long-term trend and also the rising estimates and it beating estimates. Okay, but it did have a very strong breakout here where it cleared this resistance, the top of this consolidation on very strong volume here. Okay, and that's why we featured it. It had, I think, 3 or 4 times the normal daily volume on that day when it broke out. So that's a great time to go ahead, enter a position, or put in a starter position, and then wait for the next consolidation on a daily chart after that breakout. Okay, so in this case, we can see that in August, early mid-August, which tends to be a slower time for the market, and a good time to look for these follow-on entry points set up, because you often get a pullback in early to mid-August in the overall market, and it's just a slower time for the market with less volume and less trading activity. But you always want to look for that secondary entry point after the big breakout on a lot of volume out of in this case, either a cup with handle pattern or you could call that a flat base pattern, I believe too. Given that I think this candle here actually rose above the left part of the cup. Okay, so it's really not a very strong cup with handle pattern in that sense, but it did have a very good strong breakout here. And so whether you look at it as a flat base or a cup with handle pattern, you want to see that very strong volume on the breakout. Okay, and once you see the breakout, you want to look for these follow-on patterns. And in this case, we had a nice little symmetrical triangle pattern that's set up here. And if you narrow down on this, you'll actually see a pattern we always like to see after the breakout, which is a candle over candle pattern with a gap higher, okay, followed by a break above that day's high the next day. Okay, that's key. In this case, we didn't have the gap up. We had a break of the prior day's candle here, but not the gap up. And I like to see buyers coming in before the market opens, pushing the stock price up. So we start off with a gap higher, and then a strong close followed by a breaking of that day's candle. Okay, so in this case, we actually got that here later on in August, and then after it did that, it took off and it went up. I think this is 40-50% within 2-3 weeks. Again, you want to look to keep a part of your position until at least a part of it until closes below the 20 EMA, and it goes below that 20 EMA, or even the 50 EMA if you want to hold it longer. So those are 2 great examples. On the downside, we saw one of the worst setups or worst trades that we had recently in our newsletter was SUPN. Now this was a pretty good breakout here. It didn't have as much volume on the breakout. Okay, it didn't have this follow-on pattern here. It was breaking out with increasing volume. It was a pretty good breakout. It moved up a few percent here, but then here it had, on this day, I'm not sure what day that is offhand, I think it's around the 18th or 19th or something. On that day before the market opened, they had a story that came out that they had bad trial results. It was a bad trial result for one of their drug candidates. Okay, and one of the rules in our methodology is to go ahead and sell if any negative news, any significant negative news comes out about the company. So those that saw that on the site and read the free primer that we constantly remind people of in the newsletter, who read that and were paying attention, saw that negative news item that came out before the market opened that day, sold, and got out with a very small loss on that trade. And I know ourselves, we sold some as it moved into these highs here. We took some off up here, and we're actually on vacation and didn't have a chance to check the news, but we only had a very small position left out of the initial position that we put on. I believe in here and also up in here. We had it also in the newsletter prior to September and August too. I think he was I think in the newsletter somewhere in here as well. But it's one thing you want to look for on any trade. When you swing trade, you want to see if there's any negative news items about the company that's significant, and a bad trial result for a key drug candidate for a biotech company is one of those news items that will definitely have an impact on the stock price, and that's a good time to go ahead and just cut the trade at the market open and then move on to the next trade. Yeah, and we also had another setup here I wanted to show you really quick because I promised you a setup that's developing right now and still near a good entry point. This is a stock that formed the explosive bottoming pattern. This is probably our favorite bottoming pattern that comes up on stocks with rapidly improving fundamentals. What we try to do is you make a list of all the companies beating estimates with rising future expectations, top growth stocks, and then if any of those stocks during a market uptrend, during a bull market, if they ever fall and become oversold in key areas, using key indicators that we use, which aren't actually on this chart, but there's a key indicator that we use to know whether a stock is oversold or not. And once it is, we look for a very specific pattern, candlestick pattern, and if that's formed and the entry point is reached, and if there's enough gap between the entry point and the next level of resistance, which we talk about in our bottoming course on our site, the explosive bottoming course has all the details on how to use this strategy. I don't want to get into it much here because I don't have time, and there's a lot of details to it you want to know and understand before you go ahead and try this trade. But this was a pretty good setup on that trade, and we can see even though the market's pulled back 1 or 2%, I believe, over the past few days, the stock is already moved 3% from the ideal entry point, and it's already almost reached the first target. And at this point, we can just probably stop it at our entry point. Maybe take some off if it doesn't start moving higher again tomorrow. So that's another good example of a really good swing trading opportunity on a stock that has those rapidly improving fundamentals. Wanted to show you that too. We had another great, I also want to mention too, we had another great month for the TradeToBeFree.com site. This is a separate site and strategy where you basically just hold the top 3 stocks each week. It only requires 15 minutes per week with that strategy, and had another really good week, or a month I should say, in August with that strategy. I think it was up another 15% in August. You can see that here. I think the end date is September 1st on this. Yeah, September 1st on this chart. So you can see that in August here we had another great month, up I think 10% or so at least on that. And it's now almost a 10 bagger within just over 5 years before commissions and fees. But you can go to that site and learn more all about that strategy. It only takes 15 minutes per week. And if you like to swing trade stocks and want to start doing that, and you work full-time especially, you need something that only takes a few minutes per week, that's a great strategy and continues to do very, very well this year. And if you like, you can also get these technical swing trading setups where we use technical analysis to get the most we can out of these trades. Make that attempt with technical analysis. You can go to our site at TradeToBeFree.com and sign up for that newsletter for 3 weeks for free. And there's no credit card required for that. And what we do is we follow all the top growth stocks in the market and companies beating estimates with rising future expectations. That will give you an edge over other strategies. And you'll see that if you follow that newsletter over time and compare it to other swing trading strategies, you'll see over time how good this is and how much better it is. So go ahead and check that out too. I think there's links down below for that. Yeah, there's links down below in the comments section to go ahead and sign up for that free trial. And yeah, thanks for listening, and we'll give you another update here another week or two. We've been working on a lot of big updates and upgrades to the site, and those are going to come out here within the next few weeks probably. And so look for that. And now that we're wrapping that up, we'll have more time to do videos on YouTube and give you updates and more great setups, and also some great instructional videos that give you the basics and all the things that you need to know to get started. So we have some other great videos on our YouTube channel that explains a lot of the basics and helps you to get started. So, all right, that's about it for now, and best luck in your trading, and we'll talk to you again real soon. Thanks for watching today. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up below. And be sure to tap my image here to get notified when our next video is published. And if you haven't yet, tap here to get our top 2 trading opportunities for the coming week emailed to you. Stocks with the right technicals and fundamentals to make a big move higher. And if you want to learn one of my best strategies, tap here and you can learn how to do it yourself.